damn it. The fucking hell!
If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never
I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest. I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny we learned something. I hope we learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest day, from the darkest nights, from the sunny day.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Cattle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hat, with the camera wider than I wanted it, but the reason for that is my PC crashed. I can't remember the last time this PC crashed before or during a show. It's been since last year when I was having all the problems that turned out to be because Chrome kept crashing the system, and I haven't had a crash since I switched to Edge. Again, I'm trying to move over to Brave. I just haven't done it yet. But the audio went completely crazy today. I had problems this morning. I thought I had them fixed. But as I was testing things right before I went live, all of the audio was coming through the speakers, even though I had transferred it to the headset and had checked it through my Amazon Music app. That's usually my go-to. If it comes through on Amazon Music, I know it's all working. So I launched, and the sound started coming out of the speakers again. And when the sound's coming out of the speakers, you can't hear it. Great. Just great, just great, just great. And even if you can hear it, I have the sound blasting out of the speakers when I'm trying to do the show, and it comes through the microphone, and it creates a feedback loop. So speakers are verboten during the show. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll just uninstall the Raycon headset and reinstall it. That's worked in the past. I did that, and the computer went, screw you, I'm going home. Blue screen of death came up. Got a huge error message. Some dump something somewhere, and I had to wait for it to reboot before I could start again. Luckily, all my windows came back automatically. That's one nice thing about Windows 10. If your browser windows close unexpectedly, they'll come back automatically. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if that's the thing with 10 or with Edge or both, but it worked. So I didn't have to reopen any windows and drag them over in places like that. But it did take all that extra time to get rebooted to get things up again. I will say I'm happy with myself for not checking the enable auto stop on YouTube, because if I had, I would have had to have recreated a whole new show for today on YouTube. So that is what's going on there. So enough about all that. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Cattle News Rodeo, and again, I'm your host, Hat. Got a lot today. A little shorter YouTube block again today. I don't know how much commentary I'm going to do, but we'll get into a few stories here. In fact, a mea culpa from me to start on my lack of recent financial reporting and how, if I had continued, it would have made me look really bad. A story came up yesterday that I didn't cover, and I saw someone else cover it yesterday evening, and I realized I should have done that, because that points out a fallacy in my thinking that should have been presented to the group. So that will be coming up shortly. Also, let me just scan along here. I do have some numbers on what happens if the U.S. goes all electric. You may have heard that California is asking people to not charge their electric cars during the day, and especially at night when there is peak usage of systems, as the solar and wind arrays go down as the wind and sun tend to taper off at night. Interesting story there, and I've got a little bit of a think piece as to what would happen if the U.S. did go all electric, what that would entail. Interesting bit of fun there. And then also I have, ending the YouTube block, a series of stories about the explosion of backlash against critical race theory and critical theory in general in the country right now, especially in school districts. You may have heard, by the way, that the Loudoun County Public School District had one of their usual meetings, and they didn't like the tone of voice of a former state representative who went after them tooth and nail. I believe Fox used the term excoriated them for their inclusion of CRT in the curricula, and they declared the meeting an unlawful assembly and all walked out. And one guy was arrested for trespassing for refusing to leave, and another guy was arrested for disorderly conduct because the officer said he got aggressive with another attendee and them. So 2 arrests at a school board meeting. That's what's going on in this country right now, folks. The Dragon Moms are taking over. Dragon Moms are taking over. Skullcram says they arrested Grandpa. I didn't look at the age of the gentleman. Interesting. I do. There is footage of it out there, but I didn't look at it. But I'm ending the YouTube block with a full read of a Jason Whitlock piece, that appeared in Blaze regarding the deification of George Floyd. I'm not exactly sure how YouTube's going to take this reading, but I'm willing to fall on my sword for this one. I think it's that important. And I will be reading that article in its entirety. And then coming up in the after show, Harris is going to the border, folks. We'll get into that. Also, news about something happening Saturday night involving someone whose initials are 45. I'll talk about that. We may have some special programming coming up there. There is, of course, the story about Google funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology research into bat viruses. I'll be quoting for the first time from naturalnews.com, a site that I never thought I would go to, but it did some really good reporting on this. And finally, some COVID news, including how Michigan has finally joined the rest of the country in relaxing its restrictions, but Whitmer still hasn't given up her emergency powers yet. We'll get into all that and more in our daily news rodeo. But so first, let us start as we always do with where'd it go? Aha! All right, I have to fix that. Give me just a moment. When it crashed, it took the pages away. All right, there's that one. All right, there's what we're about to do. Let me fix the after show real quickly. Giving away the news story. There we go. All right, good to go. Again, pardon the interruption. Always quality live programming here on All Hat No Cattle. So first off, our first Babylon Bee bookend. This is the one on the left from their church section. Unitarian Church invites Joe Biden, says they'll give communion to literally anyone. And here we have a sign over a church door, and it says literally anyone can take communion. Dateline, Washington, D.C., a pastor from a local Unitarian Universalist Association church said today that President and First Lady Biden are welcome to come and receive communion at her church anytime, no questions asked. This announcement comes as Catholic bishops grapple with the decision on denying Biden communion due to his stance on abortion. Quote, "The Bidens are more than welcome to come and receive communion at any UUA church," says Pastor Butterfly Watkins of the Church of the Divine Honeybee in Washington, D.C. Quoting again, "We Unitarians will give communion to literally anyone. We want to be very clear that we have absolutely no standards whatsoever." Close quote. Watkins said the lack of doctrinal standards has been a hallmark of the UUA for more than 200 years, and the church has no plans to adopt any in the future. Quote, "We don't get too hung up on things like theology or religion," she said. "Heck, we don't even have any Bibles in the building. Those things in the pews are actually just old cookbooks we picked up at a yard sale." Close quote. President Biden seemed delighted by the invitation to join a different denomination. Quoting 46 asterisk, "I like the UUA a lot," Biden said. "They're not in your face about believing things about God and stuff. They're a lot like the Catholic Church used to be before they got all preachy and religious." Close quote. Biden said he intends to worship at the Church of the Divine Honeybee soon, and that his decision has nothing to do with the fact that there is an ice cream parlor directly next door. He said, "That's just a happy little coincidence, Jack." The Babylon Bee, everyone, kicking it off on a high note as always. And so first, my personal conceit: the market almost into the 34,000 mark today. The market touched briefly in the high 33,000s, but ultimately closed down just under 0.25% at 33,874 and change. Still well below its previous high of just a few weeks ago. The S&P 500 is in record territory, closing a little over 0.1% lower today, and the Nasdaq ticked up just over 0.1%, well above the 14,000 mark. So the Nasdaq still showing strong gains. Gold slipped yet again, well below 1,800 an ounce, and crude oil saw a slight rise today, up just over 0.5%, now sitting at $73.26 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate sweet crude. And finally, Bitcoin has been having a very seesaw day today. It was up around 36,000 at one point. Now it is back down to 33,000 change per coin, a very slight increase over the previous mark. All right, so my mea culpa, GameStop. As you all know, as of late, the meme stocks, as they're called, have been in the news quite a bit. You'll remember that for a while, I had been, keeping track of the 7 main meme stocks and their returns on initial investment if you had bought at the beginning of the surge. And everyone had done quite well, even with the major losses that had happened from their previous highs. If you had bought low, you were doing pretty well. But I said from the beginning that the short sellers were still going to come out on top because these highs couldn't stay, that these stocks were overvalued at those current prices of 200, 300, 400, and the short sellers could just get on the bottom side of those numbers and they would make out like bandits. And I was right for about a week. About a month, pardon me. And then, boy, was I wrong. As you can see here, you may remember the highest that GameStop, the one example I'm using here right now, had gotten was actually this chart is a little off. GameStop had gotten over 400, I believe 420 or $480 per share at one point, up from a previous of around $10 to $20 at the beginning of the year. And then there was a very sharp sell-off. A lot of that precipitated by the freeze from the Robinhood app, which many of the meme stock people were using, and it prohibited them from buying, which forced them into either holding or selling, and people panicked, as young investors are like to do, so they sold, and the stock crashed. But there was a resurgence, and that resurgence has held quite strongly ever since. And as you can see here, really since April, GameStop has been around 200, briefly touching 300 earlier this month, and has settled back down to currently at 219.34 per share. It dropped just under 0.5% today on fairly light trading, as I understand it. So the apes, as they're known, the GameStop apes, they're holding their shares, thereby locking in the value. And when the stock dips, they buy. They're playing the market hard, folks. They're playing the long term. I did not expect this. I really didn't. I thought this was going to be a quick in, quick out for the vast majority of these GameStonkers, and that it was going to blow away like dandelion puffballs. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. And I had also said, again, that the short markets were going to make out like bandits. Well, they did for a few weeks. But now, these stocks are not going anywhere. Certainly not in the kind of values that a short seller would die for. So what happened yesterday? White Square Capital, a London-based hedge fund, shut down. shut down because they had been shorting GameStop. And GameStop wouldn't fall. They lost. At one time, White Square Capital, and again, they're out of London, was managing around $440 million. And they took double-digit percentage losses in January betting against GameStop. And they never recovered. They never recovered. So they are liquidating their funds. Whatever capital is left over will go to the investors. And these folks are walking away. You may remember that Melvin Capital lost 53% of its holdings in January while they were squeezing GameStop. And they needed a massive capital infusion to stay afloat. And something like $1 billion plus had to be wired to them to keep them from going under, to allow them to make their calls. So yeah, this has been big. This has been big. Let me give you the one of the bullet points from this article from Seeking Alpha. And again, this is from yesterday. The recent second rally, which took shares back above $200 and was accompanied by big moves in other meme stocks like AMC, hit short hedge funds to the tune of $6 billion. And GameStop got a $1 billion capital raise yesterday. And so, boom, boom, and boom, folks. I really blew it. I really, really blew it. So, mea culpa. This is why I'm not managing a hedge fund. This is why I'm just talking into a camera a few times a day to people who basically like the sound of my voice and not much else. Michael Scriven says in the YouTube chat, Russia has just fired on UK ships. Holy cannoli. Hang on a second, folks. I've got to check this out. Breaking news. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. I'm sorry I was late seeing that. Russia fires on... Alright, Russia. This says U.S. ship. No, it's just... Let's see here. All right, this is an article from the British tabloid The Sun. It is from right now, and the headline is "Buzz off, lad." Russian Coast Guard yelled, "Change course or I'll fire," at massive Brit warship in partial face-off in Black Sea. All right, so what we have here is, according to the article, and again, this is from just a little while ago, a Russian Coast Guard boat barked, "Change your course or I'll fire," at a massive Brit warship. The HMS Defender was off Crimea in international waters when the 8,500-ton ship, armed to the teeth with high-tech weapon systems, was confronted by the smaller vessel bellowing out its demands. And here is here's the Defender. This is their version. It appears of a missile cruiser. Very interesting superstructure. Very interesting. But you can see there it has a what appears to be a guided 5-inch gun on the deck. Interesting. Very interesting. All right. So. HMS Defender was reportedly sailing in the Black Sea when the Russia, that's what it says there, the Russia opened fire. Russian warplanes were then called up to join in and buzz the Type 45 destroyer, with 4 bombs dropped onto its path. Okay, that is a destroyer. My bad. That's a pretty big destroyer. The Russian warplanes dropped bombs in front of the destroyer. Continuing, the incident unfolded just a few minutes before noon, when I'm sure that would have been Greenwich Mean Time, which would be that would be 6 o'clock our time. No, I'm sorry. It would be 6 a.m. our time. When, according to Putin's defense ministry, the Royal Navy ship crossed Russia's maritime border near Cape Fiolent. The 500-foot cutting-edge destroyer kept its course until confronted by the much smaller Russian Coast Guard vessel. The crew of the tiny Russian ship bellowed, and we just read that before. The Russian vessel opened fire twice, once at 12:06 p.m. and again at 12:08 p.m. before the planes were ordered in. At 12:23 p.m., HMS Defender then exited Russian waters. Retired Rear Admiral Chris, I'm sorry, reading ahead, pardon me. That's what happens when you're a speed reader. Retired Rear Admiral Chris Perry told the Sun Online it appears the Russian ship confronted HMS Defender after the Royal Navy vessel, quote, got a bit bored with it, so it fired in indignation. Quote, she was being trailed by some small border patrol craft. I think at one stage HMS Defender got a bit bored with it, so came up in speed. The patrol boats could not actually keep up, so in indignation they fired their guns somewhere, but nowhere near the ship. Now here we have another headline that says Britain denies Russia fired shots at warship. Russia boasted it had dropped bombs and fired warning shots at HMS Defender after ship, quote, crossed into territorial waters. And we don't have anything else there. Let me see here. Oh, that's a better shot of it. Yeah, that's a destroyer. Yeah, okay. That angle made it look a lot longer than it really was. My bad. Yeah, Type 45 destroyer. 32 knots speed. So it's got the Sea Viper and Aster anti-air missiles, the Harpoon anti-ship missile, and a 4.5-inch Mark 8 naval gun. Okay, 4.5-inch naval gun. I thought it was a 5-inch gun. My bad. All right. Yeah, okay. Very interesting superstructure on that destroyer. I'm sure that's all to do with radar deflection, but I've never seen anything quite like that before. Not up on my British warships, obviously. Oh, excuse me just a moment. There we go. For some reason, my Trovo notification didn't go out initially. All right. Thank you so much, Michael, for that update. Really appreciate it. We'll see if anything else breaks on that, and please bring it to our attention. Okay, so as I covered yesterday, there has been another insider from a local newsroom, this time a CBS affiliate in Detroit, who has blown the whistle on racism, intimidation, shaping the news to fit the corporate narrative, etc. And this meteorologist with Detroit CBS 62 has been fired, as you might expect. Her name is April Moss, and she sat down with James O'Keefe and did a pretty good interview. Let me read you some of the things here. Quoting Moss, I'm watching my country disintegrate, and if I don't stand up and do something when I'm able to, I just don't know that I could live with myself. No longer is true journalism being executed anymore. It's one of the greatest crimes really in history right now, because if we are shaping the American public's mind, then we need to be seeking truth. This marks the second journalist in as many weeks to step out of the shadows, detailing how media outlets are covering the coronavirus vaccine, along with the many hidden interests at play behind closed doors. Moss claimed in her interview with Project Veritas that the station was pressuring employees who opted not to get the vaccine into changing their minds through company-wide messages and emails. She called it a, quote, human rights issue, close quote. The idea of vaccine hesitancy, a phrase mentioned in a recent Project Veritas story about Facebook's internal practices regarding censorship, also showed up in CBS emails. She accused CBS of abusing the, quote, power of all the Viacom CBS brand, close quote, to legitimize the vaccine. The veteran journalist added that she is not seeking fame or fortune by coming forward. Quote, it's not about me. This is not easy. I see the whole world hurting. I had no other choice. And again, this is from ProjectVeritas.com. Please go there. There's a big interview between James O'Keefe and Mrs. Moss. So please check it out. Here's a great picture of her, by the way, with her family and the Fox reporter who came forward last week. A really big group there. There's James O'Keefe, second from the right, but this woman, the CBS meteorologist, 4 children and a husband. Obviously, she's been with that station for, I believe, 10 years. Well, had been with the station 10 years. But obviously a big day at Project Veritas, and I'm sure there's much more to come. Much more to come. Let me quote one thing from the interview here. Moss took the opportunity to shine a light on CBS's political leanings by mentioning the station deemed online influencer, which actually is a bit inaccurate because Candace Owens has her own show on the Daily Wire. But anyway, online influencer Candace Owens, quote, too political to have as a guest, but had no issue interviewing a member of the vaccine rollout team under Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer. All right, so there's stuff going on there. Moving right along. So it's normally about the time I get into state news, and I've got something on one state today, and one state in particular that has been in the news massively over the past few years, mainly because of the way they can't manage their state. The electrical grid is constantly failing because they've been shutting down nuclear plants in favor of solar and wind plants that, as I teased at the beginning of the show, tend not to produce any electricity at night because the sun goes down, and not only do the solar cells stop working, but the wind dies down, and so the turbines aren't spinning at anywhere near the proper speed to generate electricity. And California is begging people not to run major appliances, turn off all lights that people don't need, and especially avoid consuming electricity around 6 p.m. Pacific time, which is when the grid starts to slowly switch over to the quote-unquote nighttime power. That's the way they describe it. And the biggest irony out of all of this, and one that we have been talking about for weeks now, not only here but all over the internet, is that electric vehicles require electricity to charge, which means they're on the grid, which means the grid has a power demand that it wouldn't have seen just a few years ago when electric vehicles weren't as big as they are now. And California, instead of keeping up with demand, has actually been decreasing its generating capacity. And now they're asking people to avoid charging their electric vehicles because the grid doesn't have enough power to support it. There's nothing more ironic than that. Nothing, in my eye, more ironic than that. This makes Stacey Abrams coming out yesterday and saying that she's been for voter ID all along, after being on tape just weeks ago calling voter ID laws voter suppression, racist, and Jim Crow. This is more ironic than that, in my opinion. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Let's get into some numbers, though. This is a question that came up on Quora.com. I did a little research. And the question is simple. If all cars in the U.S. suddenly become electric, how much more electricity do we need to produce in percentages? And it turns out that It closed. Hang on a second. Let me open it up here. If every vehicle running gas, because remember, there's no way electric power can run a semi or heavy equipment. There's just no way. It doesn't have the range to do that. It would be impossible. But it does work for automobiles. So quoting Ryan Carl, who is a credentialed engineer, it would take 11,111 terawatt hours of electrical energy to replace the amount of gasoline energy used in the U.S. per year. And this was answered back in, where's the date again? I think 2012 or 2013, somewhere in there. 2012, 2013, perhaps a little later. So again, it would take 1,111 watt hours of electrical energy to replace gasoline energy. And in 2011, obviously this was in these last statistics were available. U.S. energy consumption was 3,882 terawatt hours. So that's basically adding almost 25% extra load on the grid. Now, I did a little figuring. The average, and this is a gross average, but bear with me. On a gross average, your normal nuclear power plant in the U.S. will generate, again, this is a gross average, about 1 terawatt hour a day. About. We would need 1,100 more of those immediately if every car in the U.S. became an electric car. Now, we're talking about going fully electric by, I believe, 2035 was the last number. Certainly California is saying 2035. That would mean we would have to build a new terawatt generating power station every 5 to 7 days between now and 2035 in order to have enough energy to power a fully electric U.S. vehicle market. That's hard, cold math, folks. I'm not saying this to be cute. You do the figures yourself. Do the figures yourself. We need an extra 1,111 terawatt hours of energy to replace gasoline energy at 2012 usage rates. Cold hard math. There's no way around it. So let's move right along. Not only are we looking at such things in the U.S., but the UK is also talking about going fully electric. And it's quite simple. Someone did the math and they said they would need another 20 new nuclear power plants if all of the UK went to electric vehicles. 20. Now, we're just talking about the plants to generate the electricity. Nowhere near in this discussion has come up the dollars and the square footage that'll be required to build charging stations for all these cars. Because people are going to want to travel. They're not going to want to just drive around their town for half hour, an hour each day, pull home, put it in the garage, and plug it in. They're going to want to go, say, to Vegas. Well, that's a little farther than some of these cars can go on a full charge. So you gas up, or you charge up midway. Where are we going to get the money to build those? Where is the money going to come from to buy the real estate required to put those up? Not including the money required to actually construct them. They're going to have to be connected to the grid. So there's all those wires, all those poles. No one's talking about the infrastructure required to care for all these vehicles. And they're certainly not talking about how much carbon it takes to make an electric vehicle. All the diesel fumes that go out in the air from the excavating equipment, from the trucks hauling the stuff from the mines to the processing plants running on fossil fuel in order to take the raw ore and produce it into a refined metal that can be used for manufacturing. All of that takes petroleum products or a fossil fuel of some other type, like coal. And as we all know, China loves building coal plants. Loves building coal plants. Ray says in the D-Live chat that Los Angeles is taking 90% of Arizona's Palo Verde nuke power. Palo Verde, I just found out today, is the largest nuclear power plant in the United States. It's 3 reactors. I believe it puts out about 3,800 terawatt hours a day. At Palo Verde. Fascinating area. But 90%, says Ray, 90%. Ray, not only does California not want nuclear power, they've been deleting nuclear power plants. They shut down their last one, I think, 2 years ago. Just boom, yanked it. It's gone. And they replaced it with enough solar power to make up for about 25% of what it was producing. In my book, that comes out as a net negative, but that's real math. It's not California math, so I really can't speak to it any more than that. But this again, folks, infrastructure. Everybody wants to think that all you have to do is take a sheet of paper, write new figures on it, and everything will be fine. They don't take into account real-world costs. Every time you hear someone talking about going fully electric, just bring up the hard truths. There's no way the trucking industry and the heavy equipment industry, including farming, can go electric. No way possible. They need fossil fuels. Same with aircraft. There's no way you could make a transport aircraft for airline or cargo. No way you could make one electric. It would be impossible. They need fossil fuels. They need Jet A, which is basically highly refined kerosene. There's no way around it. Moving right along. Okay, so talking about a Virginia school district, this time not Loudoun, but the Arlington district. Last year, Amazon was offering Kindles and hotspots to school districts for their minority students so they could telelearn, Zoom call, whatever you want to call it. And one school district said, no, we don't want that. What we would really like are a few hundred copies of Ibram X. Kendi's latest book on anti-racism. Yeah. Instead of making it easier for their students to learn remotely, something that did not have to have been done at all anyway, we knew as early as really May of last year, at the latest, that it would be perfectly safe for kids to go back to school. And the teachers' union screamed bloody murder, pulled a nose hair, made themselves cry, and refused. And are still refusing. They're still leaving it open that they may not come back in the fall, many of them. They just won't say that publicly, but it's true. They're still holding out hope that they don't have to teach ever again. But they still want to get paid. But $5,000 from Amazon went into distributing hundreds of copies of this anti-racist writer Ibram X. Kendi's book to Virginia public school students. $5,000. This is an article from the Washington Free Beacon by Alex Nestor and Santi Ruiz. Despite Amazon's offer to purchase Kindles or other equipment, Arlington Public Schools Director of Diversity and Inclusion, right there, you meet someone who says they're Director of Diversity and Inclusion, laugh in their face and ask them why they couldn't get a real job. It's the only way we're going to win back the country. Get in their face and ask them what they're doing with their lives, that they think that is an important function in our society. You've got to. You've got to. No other way around it. Get in their face. Anyway. Director of Diversity and Inclusion, Aaron Gregory, requested copy of Kendi's stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. Amazon donated between 500 and 600 copies of the book to Wakefield High School and paid $10,000 to have Kendi's co-author, Jason Reynolds, address students. People accuse Trumpers of being grifters, especially right-wing commentators during the MAGA movement, that we were just trying to ride the wave, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's certainly not me. Nobody gives a damn about this show except you guys, and I thank you much for it. But anyone outside of us really doesn't care. And that's fine. That's fine. Stay below the radar. Bugs that aren't seen are bugs that aren't stepped on. But we've been making noises about this stuff. And we've been called all kinds of names. This anti-racism stuff is pure grift. Pure grift. It has absolutely zero added value to any society in Western European culture. Zero. Especially in America. This is the least racist country in the world. Black income in America is higher than anywhere else in the world, bar none, by a long shot. Black Americans make more annually, on average, than any other black person in the world. They have the same rights as every other American. They are not policed more often based on race. That is a lie. They are not shot more often based on race. That is a lie. They are not denied loans. They are not denied employment opportunities. They are, in fact, given a leg up when it comes to college admissions, especially at high-end Ivy League universities. A white student gets a base score on their SAT or ACT, and that's included in their admission package. A Chinese American student, Japanese American student, basically an Asian American student, their scores are weighted down, while black and brown students' scores are weighted up. So these schools are forcing American meritocracy down to the bottom of the pool. Now, I'm not saying minority students don't deserve a leg up, but this is direct discrimination. It's against the law. The 1965 Civil Rights Act expressly prohibits any type of system denying or promoting someone based on race. Period. End of story. The Trump administration was involved in a lawsuit against Harvard, and one was coming up against Yale for this very policy. And this administration, the 46 asterisk administration, bailed on the case, told the DOJ to drop it. Meanwhile, screaming about anti-Asian American hate crimes. After there was a shooting that tragically left a number of Asian American women dead, but had nothing to do with their race. Merely had to do with their jobs as sex workers. This is the grift. Critical race theory is the grift. These people are making $50,000 a pop for speaking engagements. What's her name? The one who wrote White Fragility. $50,000 a pop for her to show up and give a speech. And it's the same one every time. That's the grift. That's the grift. All right, moving right along. So as we were talking about in the opening, Loudoun County, the other Virginia school district that's been making headlines left and right for weeks now, there was a big meeting last night. 259 people had signed up to speak at the event. It was opened quite early in order to fit everyone in, given their allotted time. And initially, it was going okay. It was supposed to be talking about new school policy regarding transgender students, wherein everyone was allowed to use whatever bathroom they wanted to, basically. And same with locker rooms. And parents were upset. They didn't want their children exposed to children who they felt didn't belong in that area. And they were upset about it. So there was the meeting last night. And initially, the comments were in favor, of the proposal. But reading this article from Fox News by Michael Ruiz, the first half dozen speakers were in support of policy proposal 840, but fireworks erupted when the seventh, who identified herself as the mother of a transgender Loudoun student, was booed after saying, quote, "hate was dripping from the followers of Jesus in this room," close quote. A swipe at Christian parents in the district who have argued that transgender discussions should be held at home and not in public school. The board called a 5-minute recess to let things cool off. After the recess, it was said that members had voted unanimously to end public comment if the room erupted again. So it kept coming up. People were in there. Some for, some against. There were some other mentions, though. Multiple parents asked the district to drop its appeal of a court order to reinstate teacher Tanner Cross, who was suspended after speaking out publicly against the proposal. They argued that fighting the judge is a waste of taxpayers' money and doomed to fail. You may remember that Coach Cross had said at a public meeting that he's a Christian and he does not believe in supporting transgender among students and transgenderism among students, and does not believe in using preferred pronouns. And they fired him. And the case went to court, and the court ruled just the other day, I think it was Monday, that the firing was illegal and that Tanner Cross has to be reinstated. And the school district is fighting. They appealed. So the parents are saying, hey, you're not going to win. He has a First Amendment right. He said this at a public meeting. He wasn't on school grounds. He wasn't speaking as a teacher. He was speaking as a Christian, as a parent. You can't do that. The court said you can't do that, but the district's fighting it anyway. So they're asking them, stop wasting our money. This is our money, not your money. Stop. Continuing with the article, another woman urged several board members facing a recall effort to resign and save taxpayers even more money. Others blasted a district official who allegedly made threatening internet searches on a district smartphone. I've read that sentence a number of times. I don't know what that means, threatening internet searches. Maybe they meant messages and it just was lost in translation. I don't know. I really don't understand that. But things really blew up because Senator Dick Black, former state Senator Dick Black, who was a Republican, went after the board. Again, the word I quoted earlier, Fox says, excoriated the board over its treatment of Cross and allegations that progressive community members had organized a list of their conservative neighbors to harass and publicly shame. The chamber erupted in cheers, prompting the board to vote 9-0 to end public comment for the rest of the evening, which led to loud chants of "shame on you" directed at the board and demands that the members resign. The large number of conservative parents in the room began singing the Star-Spangled Banner as board members filed out. So there were 2 arrests. the sheriff's office was there, obviously providing security just in case, and an unlawful assembly was declared after the school board left the room. There's no longer a public meeting. Basically, the room is now closed. Everybody's got to leave. Well, some people refused. One guy in particular said, "I'm not going anywhere until I have my chance to speak." We all signed up to speak, and I want to speak. And he was given a ticket, basically, for trespassing. All there was to it. But according to other sheriff's office personnel, there was a gentleman who was, quote, acting disorderly and displayed aggressive behavior towards another attendee. A deputy intervened and the subject continued to be disorderly with the deputy. Loudoun County Sheriff's Office deputies attempted to take him into custody and he physically resisted arrest. The subject was charged with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. Bad move, dude. Bad move. I understand your reasoning. I understand your passion, but that could get you in all kinds of trouble down the road. I would not ever recommend certainly resisting arrest. If you want to get arrested to prove a point, fine, but don't resist arrest. Nothing good comes of that, ever. Nothing good comes of that. Skullcram says in the D-Live chat, my own son is teaching white fragility, he puts it, in Kansas high school. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that. The sheriff's office Skullcram also says in the D-Live chat that the sheriff's office made a point this morning to say the board called them to remove the parents. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. That helps a lot. All right. I went long on YouTube. I normally don't continue, but folks, I'm going to stick around today. This is very important. I don't often read articles in full, but every now and then one of them deserves a complete reading, and this is one of them. I skimmed it fairly diligently earlier today, and I realized that this has to come out word for word. This is a Blaze.com article written by Jason Whitlock. You'll know Jason Whitlock. He's a very famous sports podcaster. He's struck out on his own, is doing very well for himself, and he's also become quite a prominent conservative voice in the black community, and he has been very outspoken against the deification of criminals just because they've been injured by police. And he has some very strong words for the deification, the canonization, in some instances, of George Floyd. Let me read this to you in full. Quoting, "The deification of George Floyd harms black people and America. The statues unveiled last week in Newark, New Jersey and Brooklyn, New York that memorialized the final 9 minutes of George Floyd's life denigrate and diminish the reputation of black men. George Floyd was a victim of his drug addiction, self-destructive behavior, and Derek Chauvin's misconduct. Floyd is not Jesus. He's not Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, or Medgar Evers, black men who died tragically in service of promoting racial fairness. Floyd isn't Crispus Attucks, the first man killed in America's Revolutionary War. Floyd isn't Emmett Till, an innocent victim of anti-black bigotry. Floyd isn't any of the black men I know who are terrific fathers, husbands, providers, and protectors. Floyd isn't Uncle Jimmy, my media sidekick, whose primary job is father to his young sons, James and Jamil. George Floyd is a prop corporate media uses for attention, a pawn liberal politicians use to push policy, and a punching bag social activists use as a symbol to explain black people and promote themselves. A prop, a pawn, and a punching bag." And again, I'm quoting Jason Whitlock in an article from theblaze.com. Continuing. "The politicians, activists, celebrity influencers, and media personalities, the exploiters of George Floyd, are determined to transform an amateur porn star, violent criminal, and drug abuser into a national hero. They do so because they have no respect for black men or black people. Yes, I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Sean King, LeBron James, Don Lemon, Anderson Cooper, Rachel Maddow, Jamel Hill, Michael Eric Dyson, Al Sharpton, Joy Reid, Joe Scarborough, Chris Cuomo, Jack Dorsey, Colin Kaepernick, and the editors and writers at the New York Times, the Washington Post, BuzzFeed, and the Daily Beast. Excuse me. The entire satanic cabal of cultural elites, both white and black, are using George Floyd and other forms of racial division to overthrow a flawed system of governance that has outperformed any other system ever invented. The orchestrated destruction of the American black man is an orchestrated attack on America's moral conscience. The retelling of the black American journey as a narrative of victimhood rather than victory is the central strategy in painting the American experiment as a failure in need of a Marxist overhaul. America's global elites prefer China and the Communist Chinese Party. That's why we're erecting statues honoring George Floyd's last 9 minutes of life. That's why President Biden suggested Floyd's death was more meaningful than Dr. Martin Luther King's. Biden and the elitist revolutionaries want us to believe that America's system of government denies black people agency. We're defenseless punching bags for Trump supporters, Proud Boys, conservative evangelicals, rural militias, Republicans, and every other group that doesn't pledge allegiance to the Democratic Party. In their reimagining of our history, we have no accomplishments more compelling than our suffering. Our story isn't about what we've done or will do. It's about what has happened to us. We're an American tragedy, and he's speaking of black men. George Floyd is relevant only because of the actions of Derek Chauvin, a white police officer. The new fixation on the Tulsa massacre is a story about what happened to black people. The new Juneteenth national holiday is a story about what happened to black people. No one who wants to promote a positive self-image and inspire young people to achieve will explain their journey the way black people are being coerced into explaining theirs. It's offensive to build a statue celebrating a man whose most memorable accomplishment is having a policeman kneel on his neck and back for 9 minutes. It's insane. Let me use the story of LeBron James as an example. If LeBron wanted to inspire his own kids with a story about his basketball career, he would tell a story about what happened to him in the NBA Finals series against the Dallas Mavericks, or what he did in the Finals series against the Golden State Warriors in 2016. Would he paint himself as a panicked loser or as a courageous champion? I don't know basketball, so I couldn't say what the difference is between the Mavericks Finals or the Golden State Warriors Finals. I have no idea. Continuing. How does the George Floyd statue paint black men? The statue in Newark, New Jersey, has Floyd seated on a park bench wearing a wife-beater shirt. I'm shocked the sculptor didn't put a crack pipe in one hand and a 40 ounce of beer in the other. The statues of Floyd need to be torn down immediately. They're racist. They're designed to symbolize that America turns blacks into lazy men, criminal drug addicts. I reject that in the name of Frederick Douglass, Richard Allen, Booker T. Washington, Benjamin Banneker, George Washington Carver, Thurgood Marshall, Clarence Thomas, Colin Powell, Muhammad Ali, Jackie Robinson, Ben Carson, Nat Turner, and so many more. I reject it on behalf of my father, my brother, and so many of my friends. As black men, we must put a stop to politicians, activists, and corporate media using us for an agenda that doesn't serve us. And those of you who love this country must join us in putting a stop to this exploitation and bigotry. Elites denigrate black men as a means to tear down America. Elites finance, platform, and promote black degeneracy in music, movies, social media, podcasting, police interaction, etc. as a means to destroy America. Challenging the left's systemic racism is the duty of every God-loving, patriotic American. And again, that is none other than Jason Whitlock, writing for Blaze Media. This came out yesterday. Again, I went long on YouTube. Normally I don't, but I really felt that was important to bring to everyone's attention. And let's just see if YouTube allows us to stay up or not. They may not, but I thought it was worth a try. YouTube, I must let you go. So please remember, we will be back tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for another news rodeo. But before then, starting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, I will be continuing my playthrough of Far Cry 5. We have gotten into the first couple missions of John. Hang on, so let me get it here. I want to be sure I'm right. John Seed's territory in Holland Valley. Yes, we've done the first 3 missions. I'm about to start on the Clutch Nixon mission, which is the aerial obstacle course mission. We'll be starting on that tomorrow. once I get to that point on the map. One thing is, I've been having a hard time getting to points on the map because I get lost. Even though there's a great map and pointer system, I still get lost really easily because of my brain damage. So I beg that you bear with me. I did have a bunch of money left over today when I ended, so I wound up upgrading my assault rifle to a reflex sight and a suppressor on it. The baby's sweet, really sweet. Next, I'll be upgrading my SVT sniper rifle. Yes, that would be Far Cry, Ray, not Fry Cry. That was actually, for those of you who pay attention, my initial banners for the series did in fact say Fry Cry, not Far Cry. Oh my God, it says, I didn't change it. Ray is pointing it out right now, and it's right there in front of me, and I didn't notice it. Hang on just a second. Hang on just a second. I did not update that. I did not update that. Hang on just a second. Very good eye, Ray. Good eye, as always. A great friend to the channel. Let me see here. Where is it? Where is it? I think... Nope, that's the opening. Nope, never mind. I'll fix it later. Thank you, Ray. Thank you so much. Yes, that's a good laugh to have at my expense. Deservedly so. But yes, it is Far Cry, not Fry Cry. What are you going to do? Laugh. Let's just laugh it off. All right, YouTube, I'll see you tomorrow whenever I see you. But I will be back tomorrow morning, so maybe you'll join us then. Until the meantime, be good, y'all. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.